Welcome to my ChatGPT course. My name is Emily, and I'll be your online instructor. A prompt is a written instruction that you give to ChatGPT. The better you learn to write prompts, the better the response from ChatGPT will be. Next is the token. A token is a text fragment, and one token is around 4 Latin alphabet characters. So each GPT model has its token limits, and the use of the tokens is paid if you use the ChatGPT API. Why does it matter? If you end your prompt with a space or anything that isn't a character, it's going to disrupt the tokens and it will result in a lower quality output. So in this course, just to clarify, I will use output, response, reply, and answer interchangeably, and I mean the answer that ChatGPT will give you. The input, on the other hand, is the text that you will write to ChatGPT. Creating an effective prompt is a learned skill. It's not really something that comes naturally. The wording of the prompt directly impacts the responses generated by ChatGPT. So first, we're going to have a look at some concepts to make your prompts better. And then we're going to go step by step, and I'll teach you all the elements that need to be in your prompt. Let's dive into the best practices. So the first one is you have to know exactly what you want. And if you want something that has a specific term in a specific industry, you have to know the name of it. The second best practice is to let ChatGPT ask questions. So in the prompt, you can always conclude your request with, feel free to ask questions if you need before giving me the final answer. You can also ask GPT if everything's clear or if you need to clarify something or add information. The third tip I have for you is to give ChatGPT a role. Tip number 4 is to provide relevant detail and context. So if you add context and relevant information, you will help ChatGPT to understand exactly what you want. It can be in different ways. It can be explaining who is your target audience, who you are and what your goals are, explaining what you tried before and what you want to see in the future, and more. The last tip I have for you before we move on to the prompt structure and the template to use is to avoid saturating the prompt. If you add details, they have to be relevant. If you add stuff that is useless to ChatGPT, it's going to get confused. Let's look at some examples. If you say, I paid a social media manager and they sucked, it's useless to ChatGPT. But if you say, hiring a freelancer doing traditional social media marketing was not good enough, it's going to help ChatGPT understand your goals. It's going to help ChatGPT understand that you did this before with this person, with this method, and it didn't work. Let's have a look at a different example. If you tell ChatGPT, I study 4 hours a day, but I always get distracted, it's kind of useless. But if you say, I have enough time to study every day, but I cannot focus, this is going to help ChatGPT understand the problem. You have all the time that you need, but you don't use it well. So ChatGPT is going to give you time management advice, which is what you need. So unlike AI generating images, ChatGPT will actually get confused if you add way too much information. Now we're going to dive into the prompt structure, which is probably the most interesting part of this course. It's 12 steps, and it's very easy to implement. So the first one is, if applicable, you ask ChatGPT to forget or ignore all the previous instructions before this one. Then you introduce yourself and your goal. You explain the purpose, the problem to solve. You explain what worked, what didn't work before. You explain what you wish to have in the future, if that's applicable. For example, if you're looking to make your business better, then it's applicable. If you say, oh, ChatGPT, this is how it works now, and I want it to work this way in a stable way in the future, for example. Step number 6 is to give examples and ask for specific keywords. Then you describe your product or service, if applicable. You define the length of the reply. You explain the tone and the voice of the expected output. You define the expected format, so a list, blog article, HTML optimized text, SEO friendly, headings, subheadings, and more. Then you define the style and target audience, and then you let ChatGPT ask questions. So let's take a look at some examples. I made a prompt with the 12 steps. I ignored some of the steps because they were not applicable. And that's the final prompt. It says, I'm Emily and I teach French online. I'm working on a French advanced course and I need to make sure more students sign up. I only promote my course on social media and coupon groups and I need a better strategy to make sure my course sells more. Can you establish a step-by-step plan to help me? Let me know if you have questions. And I've actually already published a French advanced course and I marketed it and I know how it works, so I'm able to tell you if ChatGPT is actually giving me a valuable answer. Generally, it's a very good list. So before we go into the part of the video about adapting your prompts, I just want to help you create a prompt to help you study. I know there's a lot of students taking this course, so I'd like to present you the format for the prompt to help you study. So the first step is to present the theory or the raw text that you're supposed to know. Specify which parts you're supposed to know. Maybe not everything has to be remembered. You have to specify if rewording is accepted. So if you have the right answer in the concept, but the words are not the same. Step number 4 is to specify the style of questions, and then you specify the number of questions, and then you basically tell ChatGPT to stop asking questions that you correctly answered and to insist on the wrong answers. So that should help you create a quiz with ChatGPT. And it can also be in dialogue form. It can also be ChatGPT casually talking to you and you're supposed to give answers and things like that. Now we're going to dig into adapting prompts, which is something very useful if you don't want to keep having to rewrite your whole prompts all the time. So the first tip I can give you is to tell ChatGPT to keep going. And not really just continue, but you can say, please create the missing part. It's better than say continue. So sometimes ChatGPT will interrupt itself because of an error or because you reached a character limit. In order to receive the rest of the answer, you can ask GPT to continue where it left off or add the missing part. Since May 2023, you should now see a button that says continue, and ChatGPT will tell you that it needs your approval to continue or not. I've also seen sometimes when I ask GPT to generate a list, it tells me, oh, point 8 to 15 will be given in the next answer, for example. Another thing you can do with ChatGPT is to interrupt it. So if ChatGPT is starting to go off wrong from the start, just interrupt it and explain again or add information. Most of the time, 90% of the output is useful and you can just say, oh, can you write that answer again but add or remove this kind of information? Or can you explain but in a more complex language? So it's all about that. It's all about discussing with ChatGPT until you have the answer that you want. So to correct your prompt without confusing ChatGPT, just hit the stop generating button and say, okay, that's not what I asked for. Let me add more information and let's try again. Another tip I have for you is to add data sets. So when GPT seems to give you the answer you're looking for in the format you asked for and everything is going well, add another data set to make the answer perfect. For example, this is a job description. Please write a cover letter for it. Then GPT will write the letter. Then you say, this is the company that the job is for. So adapt the letter based on the company and their values. And then GPT is going to change the letter. And then your final prompt could be, oh, this is my list of skills. Please include it in the cover letter. And then GPT will produce another letter. And then you will have the perfect cover letter for this job in this company based on your skills. Another tip I have for you is to use the relevant keywords. The clearer you are with ChatGPT, the quicker you'll get the answer you want. So I listed a bunch of words and commands that you can use with ChatGPT. You're going to find it in the resources section. For example, you can use rephrase, paraphrase, rewrite in the style of this author, or rewrite for this target audience. You can also say explain in a simpler way, explain in a more complex way, simplify, explain to a 10-year-old child. You can use solve, explain, sort. You can use check for spelling mistakes, spell check based on British English, American English, Australian English. Rewrite this and add this type of slang, make the output longer, make the output shorter, debug, provide feedback, generate code, suggest improvements. Also, if you use precise wording, it's going to help ChatGPT. So let's pretend you want a list of 5 things or 6 things, and you say, ChatGPT, give me 4 to 6, blah, 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 blah. It's more precise than a few, because a few is very vague, even between humans. If you say, oh, give me, do you have a few dollars? For some people, it's like $2. For some people, it's $20. We never really know. If you want to make life easier for ChatGPT, you can use the first prompt to set up some rules and make things easier. So I'm going to provide you with a basic example. Hey, GPT, if I insert a word between dashes, it means I want you to translate it to French. And then ChatGPT is going to be like, okay, I understand if you place a word between dashes, blah, 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 blah. And that's a pretty simple one, but there's people who do incredible stuff with like, oh, slash and then a dash, and then if I say this, then you have to say this. And so you can change it to whatever you like, whatever is better for you. The last tip I have for you is to use follow-up prompts. ChatGPT talks like a human, so use it to your advantage. In real life also, when you talk to people, maybe something is wrong in a conversation and you say, oh, sorry, can you explain that to me? Or can you use a different word? Or can you explain this? And ChatGPT works the same. So you can say things like, can you rewrite this, but make it longer? Can you rewrite it in this format? Can you adapt it to this language? Can you spell check? Can you make it longer, shorter? Can you rephrase? Can you do it again, but with additional information? And it's going to be helpful. You don't have to write a new prompt. Sometimes you forget something in your prompt, and that's fine. But then you just wait for GPT to generate the answer, and you say, okay, I forgot to ask you, can you also do this? And then ChatGPT is going to, do the rest. ChatGPT is a language learning model, which means it generates sentences based on previous entries and most likely used word in that context. So the more information you give to ChatGPT, the better the result will be. Let's take a look at some examples. So always give context about your goal, your plans, who you are, what you tried before, what platforms you will use or you used before. It's going to help ChatGPT to adjust to your needs. So if ChatGPT does not give the answer that you want, ask for a more or less academic language. Explain to ChatGPT who is your target audience, so it's going to adapt its language. So always tell ChatGPT if you want a specific format, like lists, numbers, comparison table, and more. Let's pretend you want to write a book on Amazon, but you're not really sure how to start and you want ChatGPT to help you. If you prompt and say, hey, help me publish a book on Amazon, ChatGPT is not going to exactly understand what you want. I mean, it will, but it will give you very generic advice that is pretty useless. So we're going to make a prompt that is more detailed, and then we're going to ask ChatGPT to elaborate on each task because it's going to remember the answer it generated, so it can, expand on it. If you feel like the answer is not enough, you can always ask something like, what's the workaround solution? Can you elaborate on this? Can you explain what you meant with this? If we tried this, is it going to work? You can also say stuff like, this is not what I asked for. Could you try again, but do blah, blah, blah instead? I'm going to take a very simple, common problem example. Let's pretend you have a mosquito invasion in your house. That's your problem. How can we solve it? Well, the easy solution is just killing the mosquitoes, right? But it's not a long-term solution, and it doesn't help you understand what caused the invasion. So we have to explore all the angles. That's also very important, exploring all the angles. So what does it mean? What do we do now? How do people did it before? Did it work? How to prevent it in the future? For the mosquito invasion, it's not really relevant, but if it's more of business questions, it's more relevant. This can be applied to all sorts of problems. So keep your questions clear. You can ask multiple things at once, but it cannot be confusing. So make it natural in the conversation. If GPT gave you a solution about the mosquitoes, you can say, okay, how do I make sure it doesn't happen again in the future, for example. Also make sure you use proper spelling and grammar so there's no confusion. Congratulations, you've reached the end of this course. You learned a lot and now have the tools and knowledge to apply what you've learned in your personal and professional life. I hope you found this course informative, engaging, and valuable. Keep learning, growing, and challenging yourself. Your feedback helps me improve the course and provides valuable information for other students who are considering taking this course. Thank you for your time and support, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors.